Welcome back to my channel. This is New Kingdom Gardners. Starting in order, we'll cover the overview of the game, the setup of the game, strategy points of note, post-playtest review, and a few final thoughts and tips. In this game, you'll be selecting from one of 8 asymmetric gardeners and placing them on your player board, planting seeds into your garden, and you'll be pruning those unwanted thorns. Additionally, you'll add these worker cards. As you play these into your garden, special benefits come as well as the mechanics, which may give you extra action. Using the on your turn action guide, we'll be using these doves to track our progress. The aim of the game is to get victory points, otherwise known as fruit, and the person with the most fruit at the end of the game wins the game. The end of the game is marked when the draw pile has been depleted, when somewhere in the bottom 10 cards of the draw pile, the Master Gardener has been drawn. To start the game, every player needs a player board, 3 fruit and 2 doves. Next, shuffle the Gardener cards and deal 2 to each player. Explore the 2 Gardener cards you've got, looking at their special ability, and select one for your game. Take the bottom 10 cards from the draw pile, add in the Master Gardener card, shuffle them and place them to the bottom of the deck. Now we're ready to start the game and we can deal 5 cards to each player. With the fruit and the remaining deck placed in the centre of the table, we can begin the game by exploring our cards. If you've got any thorn cards, place them in your garden immediately. On your turn, you can take as many actions as there are doves. Also played onto either your main gardener or onto some of the worker cards that are from the draw pile, which are actioned into your garden. Look for available dove spaces. On this one, we've got 2 spaces available, meaning we can take both of our actions on this one card. Some cards only have 1 action space available, meaning you'll need more than 1 card to use both actions. You can use as many of these doves as available on your turn. On your turn, you've got one of 4 actions. Appoint. If you've drawn a worker card, use one of your dove actions to appoint a worker onto any player's worker board. Once a worker's been appointed, you can then use the dove action on that card to use that worker's special ability, only if that worker's in your area. If you have a worker with the same worker type as an existing worker, you can play them on top of that worker to build a team and get extra points. The team bonuses can be found in the rules. The plant action. In your hand, you may have drawn a seed card. These are played in your garden area to the furthest left point, and all the other cards shuffle along the player board. If a seed or a thorn is planted into your garden and pushes off a card, it proceeds anti-clockwise round the board to the next player's player board. Likewise, cards can be pushed from another player board onto yours. If you initiated the plant and consequently a card comes from another player board onto yours, instead of going into yours, it goes into the discard pile. The prey action. It may be that in your hand you're short on cards and you don't want to play any of the cards in your hand. You can use a bird action to initiate the prey action, which means drawing 2 cards from the draw pile. But be careful, as the draw pile diminishes, it gets closer to the end of the game, so be strategic. Also, you may not get what you want. Prune action. Any thorns found in your garden at the end of the game count as a minus amount of fruit as shown on the card, so there's an incentive to prune. Use a dove to action the prune. Pay 2 fruit and place the thorn into the discard pile. If you remove a thorn from someone else's garden, instead of discarding it, keep it in your own pile, and this will be added as 3 fruit at the end of the game. In the deck there are 7 different types of worker cards available, each with a different ability and a symbol showing the type of worker. There are only 4 different types of worker spaces available, so be strategic which ones you use. Types of workers are always placed on a different type of space. If you have one of the same, it can be placed on top for teams as explained and get additional bonuses. As we get to the end of the game, towards the last 10 cards, we will eventually draw the Master Gardener. At this point we end the game and count up to see who has the most victory points. First thing to do is deduct any fruit from thorns, so here we need to deduct 3 from our fruit supply. Remove the thorn and take out 3. With our fruit while gathering, the yellow ones are worth 1 and the purple ones are worth 5. So straight away we can see we've got 10 points here, another 2 and a 3 gives us 15. Plus on each of the cards in our garden, we get 2 fruit for this one, 1 for this one, but also our workers gain us fruit, so we can add up these at the end. Neither the main gardener nor doves count as victory points. So we finally managed to get the game to the table last night. We played one game after another and ended up staying there till the pub closed. I think all in all it took us about 3 games to play before we got all the rules right and made the corrections, but it was great. I played the same game over and over again. We played about 6 games, I think. So I just want to go through now some of the thoughts and feelings we had on the game. So one thing I loved about this game was the engine building, and in that what I mean is the different mechanics and special abilities on the gardener compared with those of the workers that are introduced. So as you introduce workers, it changes the rules of the game and the abilities that each player has. What that means is that as you look at what cards are being drawn, you compare that with the ability of your particular gardener to make better decisions based on which workers you're going to bring into your garden and which ones you're not. Because you will see a pathway as you play through of how to maximise on the amount of fruit you're gaining each turn, and which gardeners you need, which tools you need, which mechanisms you need to really maximise that and make good decisions throughout the game. And it keeps the game really interesting and really engaging. I think this is one of the factors why we kept coming back to wanting to play over and over again, because it gives that variation of having different gardeners, different mechanics. It's just brilliant. So as an example for your opening hand, if you've got this gardener, you start the game with 3 doves, meaning you've got 3 actions from the very beginning of the game. But bear in mind that when you start, you can only action the amount of spaces that the doves are available. So typically speaking, you can only actually use 1 action. So the quicker you bring in other workers, the better with this particular gardener. But other gardeners will operate differently, so you'll have to make different decisions as you move forward. Typically when setting up the game, you're going to take cards out of the deck based on the number of players playing. But we found, as we enjoyed the game so much, we preferred to play with a full deck because it just meant for a longer game. But the game still works, it doesn't change anything about the game. So either you can take cards out if you want a shorter game, or if you've got a bit more time and want a longer game, you can leave all those cards in. One final thought on playing itself. This game is designed for 2 to 4 players. But given the mechanics of it and looking at the maths, vaguely speaking, I suspect if you had 2 copies of this, you could introduce more players into the game based on the variations of variables available. And I think it will work and make for a really interesting game. Now, I haven't tried that, but I definitely want to. So when this game comes out, I will certainly be getting a second copy. I did find that when we made the game available at the board game night, that it didn't really draw people in initially. People didn't pick it off the shelf, and it wasn't easy to get it to the table. One thing that struck me, I did wonder if it was perhaps the artwork, that it wasn't necessarily to people's particular taste. You can never really judge these things, but certainly once playing it, the artwork makes so much sense. And on that, I want to get into a little bit about the game, about the concept behind it. So it's obviously a faith-based game. It was a pastor that developed it, a really, really nice chap actually. I spoke to him online a few times in the development stages of the game. As he was building it, I was really excited to get a copy and actually specifically requested this one so I could review it rather than him contacting me and saying, hey, do you want a copy? So I sought this one out because it looked and sounded really interesting. The thing that particularly grabbed me is it's a faith-based game. I've seen from some of the other reviewers that they actually likened it similarly to, say, C.S. Lewis. In The Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe, you can watch it as an independent film, not know any of the theology behind it, and still enjoy it as a decent film. And this game is no different in that regard. You can enjoy this game just for the sake of it being a game. And I tested this when we took it to the table with a couple of friends the other day who aren't Christian, and they absolutely enjoyed it. They said that they didn't even recognise any religious theme to it other than the action word pray is what stood out for them. But that was the only implication that they had to a faith-based game. But what's even more interesting is the fact that because it is a faith-based game, the theology of it is phenomenal. It's fantastic, phenomenal. I'm trying to get my words out there. It's exciting how intricate the details are. So for an example, we've got the action using these dove pieces, which are likened to the Holy Spirit. In that, theologically speaking, in the Christian, in the Bible, it talks about being by the power of the Holy Spirit, and in the same way you're actioning with the dove representing the Holy Spirit, which I thought was quite clever. The fruit of the Spirit, again, is a theological term that's used scripturally speaking, and so you're seeking to build up fruits of the Spirit. By this you want, as Christ says, my followers will be known by their fruit. And so there's so many theological references and things you can draw out for it. And I could go on example after example, but the entire game has been really thoughtfully themed and constructed all the way through. Every aspect of the game I found theological references from my own Bible study over the years, and I would wholly encourage people that are particularly theological based and Christian faith-based games. It's brilliant. This is certainly going to be one of our favourites, and I know I say that a lot about a lot of different games, but this one really just blew me away from all other games. This is one that I will be looking to play time and time again.